Hi there, my name is Jan-Philipp Drude. I'm with the Department for Digital Methods and Architecture at the Leibniz University in Hanover. And this tutorial will be about Project DisCo, a discrete aggregational tool for virtual reality, which I'm developing for my PhD. I'm at project-disco.com where you can get the game and the code and so on. And I just go to download here and download DisCo to my hard drive and then run this installer. It will try and save my computer from this unknown source. I know this source since it's myself, so I'll run it anyway. And I invite you to do the same. And I just unpack this to my D drive. And then I have this folder Project DisCo here, where I can go to this current version and say launch DisCo. I now get prompted with this launcher, which is divided basically into two parts here. The left-hand side, where I set up the starting files and the save locations, and if I want to run in VR in first person. And on the right side, I set up the game behavior. So first and foremost, I need this WASP input file. It's created in this software WASP, which was developed by my colleague Andrea Rossi at Digital Design Unit in Darmstadt. And you can get it on Food for Rhino. But we don't need to create new files, but it comes with some preset files here, where I just change in this WASP input JSON folder the stick and branch JSON. Now I need a save location as well. This will be this save folder that I got inside my DisCo folder. And then I want to say, of course, I want to play this in virtual reality and not in first person mode. First person mode is really more for reviewing, because for the aggregation you need the three-dimensionality. And now on the right-hand side, the most important thing is this snap threshold, which changes the proximity and alignment which needs to happen before two parts snap together. So this 0.1 really works well for this current system, but if you have a larger system or one with more complicated geometries in the where the connections take place, you might need a higher one. Then the number of parts are the parts you are prompted with in the beginning of the game, which float around in space freely. Again, 200 is good for this. If you have larger parts, I wouldn't go past 50 or 80, depends on the size of the parts. And then I can set up this game area size in which I can then actually aggregate, which I will leave so for the moment. And now I can basically launch Project DisCo and we see each other again in VR. Right, so I'm in virtual reality now. I've got this tool on my left-hand controller, and there's one of these building blocks on my right-hand controller. I can affect this with a D-pad and with a trigger here. So by just placing it here, putting it up and down, I can scroll it basically, and I can change through the different components with left and right here. This is always the modes for affecting the different tools with the right hand side. On the left hand side, the trigger and the pad is for controlling the menu. So I just place one part here. And now I can flick through the menu and go, for example, to the pick and choose mode, where I now have a laser pointer here. And if I point it to a part that's free and I click it, it becomes attached to my controller. And if I bring it into proximity here, it will snap. If you can't see your controllers and they're lying on the ground, although they're nicely connected, you can go into the Steam VR settings and check the controller bindings that they are set to the DisCo preset For that you need to have your Steam account logged on. Now to show some different tools that I have here in my menu, with my up and down I flick through the different menu headers, and then I can change to a next tool or next option with left and right, and I can apply that option or choose that with a trigger here. Now, for example, I'm in choreography mode, which is the main mode of Project DisCo, and these three parts now become responsive to the movements of my controller. You see, if I move it up, it comes up. If I move it down, it goes down, left, right. And it's also responding to the velocity of my controller movement. So if I'm really fast, I can shoot him round. The number of these affected parts I can change as well. They are chosen out of these parts flying around here, which is the number that I set in the launcher, 200 at the moment. And I can go up to number of parts and just hold my right D-pad here pressed, and it grows to now 54 parts that I'm affecting. And if I'm holding still, they form this bubble, and then I can better affect where they go, and for example, let it grow here a little bit. To have the growth not completely happening randomly, like forming these bubbles is one nice way of giving directionality, but I can also apply some filters. For example, I can go to the type filter here, and these are the flags for the types that I'm affecting, so I can turn parts of that off. For example, now I have only 54 of the branches, and these linear sticks are disabled. So if I bring these here, it will grow only with these parts now. Or vice versa, I can turn these back on and turn these off, and now it's only taking these sticks. And there's also the rule filters. At the moment they are showing some rule groups here that I created in WASP. But if you don't create any rule groups, they will show the rule grammar. And here again, you can just turn off. So if I turn these two off, they become this darker blue, and now it will only connect at the ends. This, of course, now needs probably a little longer since there are less connections open. Or I just go into the pick and choose mode where these rule filters are valid as well. And now I can't go anywhere to the side here, I can only go to the end. Or of course I could have only the sides. And now it will grow in this direction. Then I, of course, can delete some parts if I just point at them and click. Then they go away. Or to get further control over growth, I can use this disable sphere. If I have this blue, I can scale it with up and down. And I hold my trigger pressed and hover it over some of these parts. They are getting dark, and that means they are being turned off for aggregation. So that aggregation can't take place here. You can see that nothing's working here. I can, of course, turn them back on again. If I go to my disable sphere and I go to left here once, it gets this reddish color, and with that trigger pressed, I can turn these back on again. So this is basically my modes of changing, giving intent to the growth and letting it follow the way I want to have the assembly happening. So when I'm happy with an assembly, I can of course save that to later reload it in DisCo or load it into WASP. So I just hit save. It says the date and the time and a save before that. If if I now hit new and say I really want to have a new game, I could, for example, reload that. There's a test file in here which I created in WASP, which I could choose and further aggregate upon, or I now choose that with the current time, which is this, and I say, yeah, I really want to load that, and it's back in here again. Now we covered almost everything. One more thing would be the physics simulation. Like if I go here and hit that, it will simply fall to the ground. And when it becomes static, it will reset. What it does there though is if I say I want a new game and then I load, now there's one here that says sim and the current time, which is now the simulation result. So I can reload that, and for example, if I turn these back on and go to my choreography mode, I can further aggregate on this, as you see. One last thing here with the choreography mode, the D-pad doesn't have any tools here set to it, but I can hold the trigger, and if I hold the trigger pressed, they will drift apart to, yeah. If you do something spherical, that might be interesting. Yeah, that's kind of Project DisCo. With different discrete systems, of course, you can do a whole lot of other stuff. And I would like to invite you to try it out and test what you get going here. Thanks for watching, and see you around.